RAG. How many times you saw people talking about RAG in the latest months? Countless of times. Retrieval augmented generation. RAG sucks. It's not $1 billion idea. The interest that people are putting into RAG is not it isn't deserved by this technique. This is green tea. You know, I discovered that in Europe we see at green tea as, you know, this magic healing beverage. At the same time, in Japan, coffee is gaining popularity for the same reason, and it's like RAG, right? Hype. Why RAG is not so cool? Let's start from what RAG is. So RAG is a technique in order to improve the LLM response, the reply provided by some question by an LLM. How it works? It's very simple. You take the user query, you retrieve documents, fragments of documents, and that's one of the problems that are related to the user query, and then you tell the LLM. So the user asked this question. I will provide you these fragments that are related to the question the user asked, and then with all this context, please give me the best reply you are able to provide me. Usually the fragments are retrieved using vector search, so we basically turn the query of the user into an embedding, into a learned embedding using another neural network, a model that is able to transform a user query into an embedding. Then we created an index in some database system where we put many fragments of documents by their embedding, and so we do a KNN search taking the similar documents to our search, and that's the way it usually works. But this is an implementation detail. It's not the important part. What is important is that we take an LLM and provide the query of the user with related documents. Why this is less interesting than it looks? First, modern models have a very large context window, so you can put a whole PDF which is related to the query of the user. For example, imagine a company that wants to use RAG for their knowledge base. Instead of providing LLMs fragments, so the LLM will end not having a very strong idea about the subtle things of the context we are talking, we can just do some kind of matching, even with vector search, about whole documents describing whole processes and the query, and then provide the document as a whole in the context window of the LLM, and hope to get a much better reply. You can see how this thing doesn't work as expected if you use ChatGPT instead of Claude. When you attach a document in Claude, it will put the whole document in the context window of the model, and it works great. ChatGPT instead uses RAG when you attach multiple documents, and the reply, it's clear that the reply isn't really focusing on all the aspects of the code you are providing, the document you are providing. But in general, it's obvious that if you have new models that are capable of getting as input a whole document, and also these models are able, as they have a so sophisticated and very well working attention mechanism, that of the whole 300 page document, if there is just a sentence which is relevant to the query, they can identify it and use it. The needle in the haystack problem, basically. So they work so well in this way that using RAG is just making the generative models weaker. Of course, there are many ways to use RAG. It's not just this way that I told you. There are extensions like the LLM, for example, that can do a second pass saying, "Oh, you provided me with fragment 10, which looks like it's extremely well related to the user question. So please extend this fragment to a larger document." This is called dynamic RAG or adaptive RAG or something like that. Another, in my opinion, more interesting variation of this idea is self-RAG, where the model actually provides you with full text search query, and you query your documents like if it was a Google search basically, and you say, "I have these documents in my knowledge base. What do you want to see?" And the LLM will tell you, "Please give me 5, 7, and 12, and or whatever." I believe it's much more powerful to use instead document level augmenting, which means basically I just turn the query into a set of complete documents about my query, and I put the whole documents in the context window of my LLM. Of course, this is much more costly in terms of energy and generation of the tokens, because the attention mechanism is quadratic, and the larger the context, the more GPU time it will require to provide the query. However, the results are so much better. You may ask, if you know the work I'm doing right now, because I'm working exactly to implement vector sets for vector indexing inside Redis. If you don't believe RAG is useful, why you think vector sets are useful for Redis? Exactly because I believe that the embeddings themselves are extremely powerful things to use in modern computing. Just not for RAG, but even if I want to do document level augmentation, putting whole PDF files in the context window of the LLM, I need some way in order to retrieve a related document. Also, if I want to have, I don't know, I want to perform complex recommendation systems, or I want to create intelligent doors that see my face and open if I am among the registered versions of even a much better example. For example, when you use an LLM like Claude, you end having many chats in your history, and right now they use full text search when you want to search a given chat among the latest that you did. Here, vector search is much more powerful. So if I write in my Claude history algorithms, I want to see every chat about algorithms, even if the word algorithm itself is not inside my chats. So there are plenty of good use cases for vector search, but maybe RAG is something that was interesting in a given period of time in generative AI, and we will see it in the current form at least to lose interest and to become just one of these random ideas where the business jump itself in for a second, and then people realize that there are better ways to do things, and I strongly believe this is the case. Give me your thoughts about if you agree or not with this kind of vision. Bye.